This is the story of the weekend. There was fisticuffs went down in Cleveland between Tim Anderson and Jose Ramirez. This was better than a lot of like title fights I've seen over the last several years.
Only because there are more people in the box. That's the only reason it was any better, Brad.
I don't know. I feel like I see boxers dance around for their whatever, like 3-minute rounds or whatever, 5-minute rounds, whatever it is that they do. And less punches are connected than what we saw here. Because Tim Anderson, like to his credit, got several body shots in.
He got them in, yeah.
And I think he got one to the jaw of Jose Ramirez, but apparently that guy's got a steel jaw.
He did, but that dude
last jaw.
Oh, man.
Oh boy.
And Anderson's still not okay. Let's be honest.
No, he's not. So for those of you who don't know, in the 6th inning of a game between Cleveland's baseball club and the Chicago White Sox, Jose Ramirez slid into second base for an RBI double, slid between Tim Anderson's legs, and I don't know if it was because he was standing there over him for what he thought was too long, or if the tag was too hard, or what. But Jose Ramirez says that he felt for a while that Tim Anderson's been disrespecting the game. He stood up, let him know, and then they dropped the gloves. He dropped his glove like a hockey player and straight squared up, like he was ready to go.
They both came right up, and I was like, "Oh man, here we go."
Well, that's what the broadcaster said too. Here we go.
Yeah.
So, Brig, as somebody who is a boxer, what did you think of their form? First, start off like they squared up. How were their fists? Were their guards high enough, or should Tim Anderson been a little bit higher?
It was terrible form. I mean, honestly, like, and in the heat, that's the point. That's the hallmark of brawlers instead of boxers, is that in the heat of the moment, the form goes out the window. There was some, like, okay, let me put on my other hat really quick. There was some form there. These guys have done something in the past. There's an element of either training or experience that has backed up what they did. How extensive, I don't know. Either way, when you get into a for real situation like that, most of your form goes out the window. So I don't think that's a true indication.
Okay. So what about that haymaker that Jose Ramirez connected on? Because I saw somebody say that was the best punch we saw thrown all weekend, given the Jake Paul fight. Right.
Right.
And I don't know anything about throwing a haymaker, just because, like I said before, I don't want to get punched in the nose, so I'm not going to fight anybody. Right. Yeah. So I don't know anything about that. But to me, it looked wild and out of control.
It was out of control. The cool thing about, okay, so I wish, if you're not on YouTube, get on YouTube, because I'm going to show you what happened. Okay. Jose Ramirez comes up like this, right? Which is like a modified, what we would call a peekaboo defense, right?
Okay. So your guard. So for those of you not on YouTube, your guards are high. Right.
Yeah. Right up at your cheekbones, under
Yeah.
your occipital lobe. Right. Now his hands are a little farther away from his face than they ought to be, probably, given the distance of his opponent. But Tim Anderson is in this awkward, what we call almost like a Philly shell, where one hand is down guarding the outside of his lower body, and the other arm is up closer to his shoulder. And if you look at the picture, his head is hanging way out over the top of his fist. So in a snapshot, what was going to happen happened almost without fail, right? Like,
so based on that breakdown, though, it makes me think that Tim Anderson was here for body shots. He wasn't here to knock anybody out. He was here to hit you, because that's what he delivered. He gave Jose Ramirez body shots, right? He got him a few good ones in the side, but then Ramirez comes with the haymaker across the face, and then next thing you see, Tim Anderson is on the ground, and the call was fantastic as well. Down goes Anderson.
So, okay, there's so much going on here. The first thing is the hand he hit him with, Jose Ramirez. So if you take an open hand and you ball it into a fist, but it's the same angle at which you would slap somebody, right? Like I would hit a dog like with this part of my hand if I absolutely had to hit a dog, right? Like,
okay.
I don't like hitting dogs, but if a dog's coming after me, I'm not going to punch a dog like I would a person.
Thank you for the context.
Yeah, I don't like hitting dogs. Let me make that very clear. Don't hit your dog.
Mike Vick.
Yeah, that's not what. Listen, I'm not endorsing beating your dogs, okay? But if a dog is being violent, like Tim
Go
Anderson was, you come after him. Anyway, it was fully extended. It was the back. It was like this
like the heel of his hand, right?
heel of his hand, right, with just the front part of his knuckles. Thank you. I was really struggling with the words there, and it was just a really ugly punch, and his head was down, and he just kind of threw it out there. Now he threw it with tremendous amount of force. Obviously,
Yeah.
because if he didn't, Tim Anderson wouldn't have got freaking snot bubbled like he did, because it was a truly fabulous, staggering shot. Caught him right here in the lower jaw. But to your point, the call down goes Anderson repeated is the best, and most people probably know. And if you don't, here's some context. When Muhammad Ali beat Smoking Joe Frazier, when George Foreman beat Smoking Joe Frazier for the heavyweight championship, Howard Cosell, the announcer, goes, "Down goes Frazier! Down goes Frazier!" And so that's what this was reminiscent of. And you know that broadcaster has been studying Cosell for a billion years, because who doesn't if you're in broadcast? Anyway, it was just amazing.
Honestly, I think every single broadcaster, especially baseball broadcaster, has that like tucked in their back pocket for any time they fight. Because every time there's a fight, it's "and here we go," because it's going and they're waiting, like, just who's gonna hit the ground, who's gonna go down, because I get to use "down goes Frazier." They're all waiting to do it, you know it, and that's why it was right there at the tip of his tongue.
It's like the most iconic call in the history of broadcast sports, and there we are. I'm sorry I messed up the description of it, but bear with me. It's been a long day. But, okay, so anyway, Jose Ramirez, he goes on to say, I think Anderson, has been disrespecting the game for a while, which you said, Brad. And then he was telling him to stop doing that, apparently, prior to the game. And then he tapped me really hard, hit me more than needed, and said he wanted to fight. So Ramirez said that I had to defend myself.
Okay, so this is the big question I have for you, Brig. How do you feel about base brawling? Right? Baseball fights, I call it base brawling. How do you feel about it?
So I feel like we have this conversation once a year at least.
Yeah, and there's actually an episode tucked away somewhere that never got published, where we did like a whole 20 minutes about this.
Did we?
Yeah. Okay. Anyway,
maybe that's what I'm thinking of. Anyway, I think it's really bad for kids and the image of baseball. I think it's really engaging and fun for the adults watching baseball. Same reason for hockey. Hockey fights are awesome. Everybody loves hockey fights. Hockey's more, it gives itself over to fights a little more than baseball does culturally.
Oh, yeah.
Even the flow of the game gives itself over. I think that there's no good way to answer that question without splitting hairs. Because what my real live answer doesn't consider baseball as a game or as a sport or its sanctity, if we want to call it that. It doesn't consider the fans and the interpretations or impressions. My thing is, if you really feel like that's the only way you can solve a problem, and that's how you choose to solve a problem, then you better get ready to have the problem solved for you, like happened with Tim Anderson, right?
Right. Yeah.
You want to fight? Got it. Let's do it. And then he got rocked.
Yeah.
And so if you talk about it from a human perspective and it's just two people is fighting the answer, no, fighting is not the answer, but it happens.
Right. And see, this is my big thing with it, is that like you said, I don't like having to explain to my son why they're fighting.
Right.
Because it's not okay, right? Especially in Little League. Like, I remember several years ago when I was coaching 10-year-olds, it was the season that Bryce Harper charged the mound and threw his helmet. We did actually a practice where we taught the kids how to get hit by a pitch, because we had one kid turn and get hit in the chest. Like, he just turned and like bam, right smack in the middle of the chest. We're like, that's not the way, you know?
Yeah.
So what we did is we lined them up, taught them to turn their back, and we tossed tennis balls at them. And three or four of them, as they went through the line, every time we hit them, they would come at us exactly the way Bryce Harper did. And we're just like, you're not going to do that. Like, just stop. Like, it was funny the first time, but don't do it every time, you know? So you see it. And they mimic the things they see the big leaguers do.
Right.
So I don't like that. I've never been at a game with a bench clearing brawl ever.
I don't think I've ever seen one live
My
either.
wife has, though.
Oh,
And she's like, it was fun watching on the field because it's intense and it's different. But what goes on in the stands is really scary. That's the thing they don't talk about. She's like, it gets really, really tense in the stands, and there's just like a buzz, and it feels like anybody could get set off at any moment. And
yeah.
there could be a fight in the stands. And that's the energy carries off the field into the stands. And that's the other thing that I don't like about it. I don't feel like that happens in hockey, because fighting in hockey is like lacing up your skates, right? It
It's baked
happens.
in.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But in baseball, when it happens, there's so much energy and so much tension from it that it, like I said, it carries off the field into the stands. And I don't want my son at a game where that happens, because I don't want to have to, like, first off defend myself and then protect a 9-year-old, right? So
No doubt.
that's one of the big issues that I have with it. And I've thought about this a lot, like how baseball can solve the problem. I think it's a problem with fighting, right? Because it takes away from the game and it causes all those other problems we talked about.
I agree with that. Yeah.
The NBA's done a good job with it, because fighting in the NBA used to be just like fighting in hockey. It happened all the time, and it wasn't a big
Yeah.
deal
Yeah. Yeah.
until somebody got their head cracked open on the court, and then they're like, oh, now we have a problem. So what they've done in the NBA is, if you leave the bench area, then anybody who does is suspended. And in hockey, if you have a third guy come in, that's when you have a problem. And then once they hit the ground, they break it up. And so
Yeah.
I wonder if in baseball, if they're just going to be like, anybody leaves the dugout, anybody leaves the bullpen is going to be suspended. Anybody who leaves their position is going to be suspended. Let the two guys duke it out. Once they hit the ground, then the umpires step in, right? Because then I feel like it's quick. It's not going to be as quick as it is in hockey, because you're not on ice, right?
Sure.
But still, like, it would either diffuse itself or hit the ground, and then they could break it up. But you've got to keep all the other guys out, because a 30-second scuffle turns into 15 minutes of, okay, this guy was in there causing more problems. This guy was escalating. This guy was trying to solve problems. So he's not going to be ejected. But those two guys, it turns
You're
into this
right.
whole big thing when they're trying
Yeah.
to speed up games.
That's
And
true.
so I think that could go a long way to helping prevent or minimize the problem, because fights are going to happen. It's a lot of testosterone flying around, right?
For sure.
So they're always going to happen. But I think that's a way you can minimize the effect that they have.
I like that idea a lot. I also, back to my fisticuffs affinity, I suppose. I would rather not anybody get in the way and watch what happens.
Right?
Like,
That
so
would
if
be
we're
way more
gonna
entertaining
fight,
than what you see.
yeah, if we're
Way
gonna
more
fight,
entertaining.
it would be at least more satisfying
Well,
from
and the other thing that's
viewer's
funny about it too
perspective.
is that, like, most brawls are just shoving matches, right? Like,
Yeah,
because guys don't want to go out. The right-handers don't want to throw a right hook.
no, they don't.
Right-handers are going to be throwing left hooks, and nobody's going to connect that. So that would
Mm-mm.
diffuse itself pretty quickly, I feel like.
Unless your name is Aroldis Chapman, then I'm pretty sure he could throw whatever he wanted, and you'd probably go down.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
That dude, if you haven't seen Box and Train, it's fun to watch. Anyway, Tim Anderson was suspended for 6 games. That is reportedly record for the longest brawl-related suspension in Major League Baseball history or recent history or something. I couldn't get the actual confirmation on that, but it's a big deal, and it's double what Jose Ramirez got at 3 games. They're
Because
both
if you win the
appealing.
fight, they take games off. So.
Right. Well, and he's still winning that fight. I don't think Tim Anderson's okay. They're playing the Yankees right now. I don't know what's going on. So,
Yeah, he's got to
except the
be in
Yankees are
concussion protocol.
losing. Anyway, they've both appealed the suspensions, which means they can continue to play until the suspensions or until the appeals are decided. Emmanuel Clase got a game. Terry Francona got a game. Pedro Grifol got a game. Mike Sarbaugh got a game. I think all 4 of those guys are serving or have served their suspensions already and are just going to take their licks and move on. So there you go.
Last thing on this, Brig. Last thing. Tim Anderson 0 for 2 tonight. Actually in the lineup. 0 for 2
Yeah,
with
there
2
he is making an
strikeouts.
error. How many
Yeah,
strikeouts?
2 strikeouts.
Yeah.
I wonder if he's headed down the Anthony Rizzo path.
Oh,
playing through
dude's
concussion.
concussed. Did
He's
you see
absolutely
him
gotta be.
fall backward? Did you see the glassy-eyed look on his face?
Well, and did you
And
see
then,
them trying to take him off the field?
yeah,
Yeah.
he was in a different spot.
Yeah, he was absolutely concussed. I can't believe he's out there.
Yeah, I can't either.